Happy evening for all of you. On behalf of Kumbakonam Vellore branch of SARC of ICAI
வெங்கடேஷ் ஒரு ஸ்டாண்ட் இருக்கும் வேண்டாம்
and Management Committee,
ஒரு ஸ்டாண்ட் இருக்கும் மொபைல்
uh, some members kindly mute. Okay. Happy evening for all of you. On behalf of Kumbakonam Vellore branch of SARC of ICAI and Management Committee, I welcome all members to this virtual joint meeting. This is the second joint meeting with our Vellore branch. I warmly welcome our young and dynamic speaker, CA Dr. Abhishek Murali sir, Secretary of Southern India Regional Council, to this meeting. Welcome, sir. Today's topic is e-assessment. Electronic assessment, that is e-assessment, is also known as online assessment, computed assisted assessment, and computer-based assessment. Is the use of information technology such as artificial intelligence and machine learning in various forms of assessment. Former Finance Minister Mr. Arun Jaitley announced this scheme in his budget speech on February 1st, 2018. Our Honorable Finance Minister Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman had announced launching of scheme in 2019 that would provide e-assessment of income tax in electronic mode in a phased manner with no human interface. On 7th October 2019, the Revenue Secretary has launched the faceless assessment of Income Tax Department in Delhi. For the purpose of e-assessment, the CBDT would set up the centers and units and specify their respective jurisdictions. In a departure from the old procedure, the CBT has stipulated that e-assessment of a taxpayer will now be handled by two officers instead of current scenario involving a single assessing officer. In the pilot project launched in 2016, 60,000 limited scrutiny cases and few full scrutiny cases has been successfully conducted. E-assessment scheme 2019 will mark a significant modification in the manner in which tax assessment will be undertaken. Both the taxpayers and tax department will need to gear up their systems to adopt the scheme. Personal representation by the taxpayer will be limited and will be allowed only through video conferencing. Considering that there is a limited window of interactions, taxpayer will need to focus on submitting detailed documentation to explain tax position. With this short welcome note, I hand over the screen to our Vellore branch chairman for formal introduction of our speaker.
Good evening, members. On behalf of the Kumbakonam and Vellore branch of SIRC of ICA, I am invited to introduce our speaker, Mr. Dr. C.A. Abhishek Murali, for today's seminar on e-assessment procedure and practical tips. பூக்கடைக்கு விளம்பரம் தேவையில்லை. Anyhow, I am going through his paper, which is running into many number of pages, which will also consume our valuable his time. I am presenting it shortly. His education qualification: MCom, FCA, ACMA, CGMA, DISA, CISA, CIMA, ADIT, and DLIT, and passed many of them in with the rank holdings only. He is practicing for more than 13 years and the youngest member with high margin of votes of SARC of ICA and the youngest secretary of SARC of ICA. He is expert in direct taxation, international taxation, litigation, appeals, valuations, due diligence, and M&A. Conducted more than 500 seminars in 1 year and addressed over 2 lakh viewers during COVID-19 period about various benefits, and which is launched by Government of India on the importance of wealth care along with healthcare. It now deals with the direct taxation, appeals, and litigation verticals. He has been nominated first secretary economic and trade of Honorable Consulate of the Republic of Zambia. Hold various positions in ICAT New Delhi since 2013-14. And he has nominated as a chairman of the various committees by SIRC of ICA and also been nominated as member of the various committees for the past 6 years. Apart from that, he has authored 5 books of professional interest and also authored background materials for investor awareness reference published by ICA New Delhi. Finally, he has also held a position in other organizations like Industrial Chamber of Commerce, AITPA, CAFI, YMCA, and also active member of various NGOs. With this, I invite our speaker to take his touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, C.A. Sundaravaradan sir, Chairman of Vellore Branch, for a very lovely introduction for myself, and C.A. Visahan sir, who gave a lovely address as well to open out the proceedings, the Chairman of Kumbakonam Branch. Both Kumbakonam and Vellore are very close to me. Kumbakonam especially, it is where my family is from. It is my hometown, and yearly I try to visit once or twice at least. In fact, the topic today, I had already visited long back, around 8 months back or so at Kumbakonam branch. We had talked about the basics of e-assessment at that time. It was still in the pilot stage. It was not yet confirmed. But since then, a lot of changes have happened, a lot of movement has happened. So e-assessment has become a very, very important topic today, because the most important thing, earlier it was optional, today mandatory. So we don't have an option. Even if you don't like it, you like it, either you moderately like it, moderately don't like it, nobody cares. We have no other option but to accept it, and proceed with the e-assessment now. So let us, without further ado, I'll dive straight into the presentation for today, because I see so many friends, so many senior members here. So I'm very, very happy to see people have come in such large numbers, and I thank them for giving me this opportunity to present here. So today's topic, as I said, is going to be e-assessment, and what I will also be covering is assessment procedures, some of the key aspects of assessment procedures. You see, e-assessment is what is new, but assessment procedures is the backbone. It is the foundation of e-assessment, physical assessment, manual assessment, whatever you say. Assessment procedures still remain the same. So what are the critical tips that we have to consider when it comes to your assessment procedures? We will take some practical case laws also today and see in common cases that we all face during the course of assessment, how we should handle it and how we can easily win the case also. I'll be covering that through the presentation. So let's start out first with the background. See, as I told you, in July 2019, the Honorable Finance Minister at the time, and as Visahan sir lovely put it, she announced that for the purposes of transparency and to reduce undesirable practices, we want to launch e-assessment scheme. Now, the very purpose of it itself very controversial, because you and I know, if you speak to any assessing officer, what they think of e-assessment, they're very unhappy. Why they're using that word, undesirable practices? Basically, what they are trying to imply is there is corruption, so because of that e-assessment. But there are one or two people, or maybe a handful of corrupt people, cannot reflect the entire income tax officers, or cannot reflect the entire professionals, because 1 or 2% are bad sheep that cannot reflect badly on the entire profession. But unfortunately, the reality exists that is one of the reasons for launching this e-assessment. One of the basic reasons. It is not only transparency, to reduce undesirable practices as quoted by the Honorable Finance Minister. So the background was, due to all of these situations, we are bringing this major change. It's a faceless assessment. And ladies and gentlemen, the most critical thing, your assessee who is based out of Kumbakonam or your assessee who is based out of Vellore will no longer be assessed at Vellore or Kumbakonam. They'll be assessed by someone sitting in Delhi, someone sitting in UP, someone in Bengal, someone in Chennai. You don't know. And not only that, not the same person will assess year on year. Normally what happens, we know who's the assessing officer. He'll only assess every time, whether it is reopening, whether it is 154, whether it's scrutiny assessment, whether even if it's a collection of demand. Everything we know it is the same assessing officer. And year on year, even if the assessing officer is transferred, we know which office it will come to, which room they will sit out of. But under this faceless assessment, not only do you not know who he is, they will be from anywhere in India. So let us assume this year, you are allotted an officer who's sitting out of Delhi. It does not mean every time that same Delhi officer will do your case. It will be given at random. So this year, assessment year 1819, assessed in Delhi, assessment year 1920, assessed in Calcutta, assessment year 2020, and assessed in Bombay. So this will keep happening. So therefore, the department is trying to ensure there is no frequency or repetition of cases to avoid any sort of bias. So let us first understand now the history before we understand where we are now. You see, we can split it into 3 parts. The very first one is what we are all doing, manual assessment, where physically they will send you a notice. The notice will come to my office or it will come to my client's office. They will receive it, they'll give it to me. I will go and meet the assessing officer. I will discuss the case with him. He will ask for more information. I will submit more information. Then he will say, Abhishek, I am not agreeing with this. Then I will say, no, sir, you have to allow. It is not right. If you make an addition here, I will give the proof, etc. Finally, based on our discussions, based on whatever submissions I'm making, he will pass the assessment order, either favorable or adverse. That was what was being done. But this then changed into what was called an email assessment. What is email assessment? This is where when you log into that e-filing portal with your client's ID, you'll be one tab called e-assessment proceedings or e-proceedings. There will be one tab. If you click that tab, you used to have a list of your cases, what and all cases are going on. And there'll be one more option. Do you want to be assessed physically? You can select that option and say, yes, I want to be assessed physically. Or you can say, no, I'd rather be done through email or I'd rather do it through the portal. So you have the option. But remember here, two critical things. One, you had an option. Second, irrespective of whether you were doing through the portal or whether you were doing physically, it was the same assessing officer, whoever is your jurisdictional assessing officer based in Kumbakonam or based in Vellore, that same person only was assessing it. So very often this used to happen for me or my clients, and I'm sure for your clients also, where you will go meet the officer, you will discuss the case. After discussing, he will say, okay, I accept everything, Abhishek. You just go back to your office, you scan and upload all the documents. So again, whatever I give physically, I'll have to go, again I have to scan it, again I have to upload it on the income tax e-filing portal. This is what historically has been happening. And this email assessment is largely considered to be a failure because 99% of the time, if you have the option of going physically, I prefer to go physically. Whatever relationship you can call it, whether you want to call it building of a arguing the case and explaining it better, you can call it. You can call it, no, if I go and meet the officer, I'm getting free tea, samosa they are giving, so I want to go and have. So that also you can call it. Whatever it is, people prefer physical. And the reality I will tell you is that, and you may be asking this question, சரி இவ்வளோ கஷ்டமா இருக்கு கேஸ் எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணது, இவ்வளோ காம்ப்ளிகேட்டடான கேஸ். When I'm doing face to face itself, they are not understanding. How am I going to explain through e-model, sir? I have to type it out. You take IT companies, information technology companies, they have very complex contracts, complex agreements. You have something called master service agreement with one client. Then under that master service agreements, in 1 year, you will have 8 or 9 agreements with that one client. You will have terms onshore, offshore, beach. All this, beach means what? Marina Beach. No. It is again a technical term when it comes to IT companies. So therefore, it is not as simple as you can just type it out and explain. It needs some sort of thought process involved, some sort of decision making. All of this is now gone. From 1st of April 2020, it is already in effect. Now we have the e-assessment, and the difference, my friends, is that in e-assessment, the entire assessment, you don't have the option to select yes or no. It has to be done online only. You have no option. And let me tell you, it is very much in effect. The only reason why many of us are not exposed to it is thanks to COVID. Lockdown started, I think, around 24th or 25th of March. Before this effectively came into effect, and the CBDT has issued a direction to all the income tax authorities across India, saying during lockdown, during this COVID issue, go easy. Don't send any adverse notices unless absolutely necessary. Don't send any fresh new notices. They have given this specific direction to the officers. That is why many of us have not been exposed to this e-assessment yet. Otherwise, let me tell you, lockdown is slowly coming to an end in various parts of India, especially I think South India. You can next 1 month or 2 months, we can expect in Tamil Nadu the lockdown will slowly be eased out. And when it is eased out, notices will start coming, and therefore representations and submissions have to be made. And all of this is going to be done only through the e-assessment mode. You cannot do it physically. Before I proceed to explain the entire e-assessment module, couple of things that I have to share. First things first, and I've commonly discussed this with a lot of chartered accountants, be it in Kumbakonam or other cities also. How is the communication going to be received? Till now, no problem. Physically, it used to come. Either I used to get it as an auditor or it goes to my client. Sometimes, if we know the assessing officer, directly he will call me also and tell. This is how it has been done for so long. In fact, in the email assessment module also, they used to upload it onto the internet, and then subsequently, they used to send a physical copy also. So whether you went and saw on the online or not, you used to get a physical copy. However, under the e-assessment scheme, it will only come in these three following ways. Either one, email, either two, through a mobile application, not yet developed, but the income tax is planning to develop, or three, by SMS or even WhatsApp. By SMS or even WhatsApp, the communication will be received. So why am I highlighting this point? I think commonly what most of us do as chartered accountants, we used to give our own email ID and our own mobile number for the client's contact details. When you log into the website, you will get a pop-up in the e-filing portal. Once you log in, you'll get a pop-up saying, is this contact details correct? Usually we'll ignore that. We'll close that window without checking. But definitely check it. Why? First critical point. 2 years back, they brought a change where they said maximum 10 PAN numbers only can be registered to one email ID or to one mobile number. Earlier it was 5, then we raised a lot of complaints. They said, okay, we will raise it to 10. So now it has not increased from 10. So maximum 10 email IDs and 10 mobile numbers only allowed to be registered with the income tax. So that means earlier, you may have registered 200 clients you have, all 200 of them you have registered to yours.
Sir?
Earlier, even if you did not get the email, physical copy you... Sir, was I audible or something happened? Some disruption happened.
It's audible, sir. There's some...
It is audible? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I apologize. Some net connectivity issues are there. So the reason why this point is important is because in my office also, we had given only our email ID and our mobile number. Subsequently, after they bought this restriction, we felt that communications will not be received. So we changed all the communication to the client and we told them whatever email you get or whatever SMS you get, you immediately forward it to us. Because one thing is clients who know, they think they know. Some clients who don't know, that is a problem because they don't know what the email is they won't send. So what we tell them, whatever mail you get, you please send. The biggest problem are those clients who think they know. Because when they come to your office itself, they will say, rebate under 87A, why don't you allow? Sir, there is one section, chapter 6A, 80GG is there. Why don't you claim under that? When they have HRA, they will come and tell. So some clients who read, some partially they will read one news article and they will come and show you as if they know. So these clients only are usually typically the problem. Where when they get a communication from department, they'll think they know what the communication is. So they will say that was not an important mail. I did not send it to you. But actually, it would have been an important mail. It would have been a demand notice. It would have been an intimation under 143(1) where adjustment has been made. So all of these things go to the client. They'll not see properly, or they'll think it is nothing and they won't forward. Later on, when demand comes only, they will say, "What, you did not do anything, sir? What, sir, auditor, sir, you have to do everything," they will say. So we have now placed a rule saying any email that you're getting, any mobile message you're getting from the department, you please forward it to our office. We will tell you whether it's important or not. It might be as simple as return filed, because after you file the income tax return, you will get a mail saying return has been filed, acknowledgement. We said even that also you send it to us, sir. You might be sitting next to us also while filing the return. We don't care. Any mail from department, please send it to us. Under the e-assessment scheme, there will be no physical communication of notices. It will come only by email. So if your client's email is registered to your ID and you have more than 10 PAN numbers registered, then you will never receive the communication, and department will say, I already served it. Department will say, I served it, sir. It's not my fault that they are not following the rules. So I served, they have not responded, demand raised, order passed ex parte. So I am raising a demand on them. That is what the entire department will say. So be very careful when it this. Ensure that the email mobile number is updated. Now let us go into the scheme. See 143(3)(a). This is the new section that has been introduced for the purpose of e-assessment. Now I'm not going to read out the section, but there are three critical words here that I've underlined and I've highlighted. These are the most important things of the scheme. Eliminating the interface between the assessing officer and the assessee in the course of proceedings to the extent technologically feasible. So as you all already know, technology is going to be the backbone of this scheme. Next, optimizing utilization of resources through economies of scale and functional specialization. What is this functional specialization? I will explain. I will get to it shortly. And introducing a team-based assessment with a dynamic jurisdiction. What is this? Dynamic jurisdiction we already understood, where the assessee who is based in Kumbakonam or Chennai, he'll never be assessed by a jurisdictional officer based in Chennai. It will be at a completely different location only. But what is team-based assessment? Let me tell you. Wait a minute and I will get there as the slides go forward. The structure is a two-tier structure. There is going to be something called the National E-Assessment Center based in Delhi, headed by the Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax over there. And of course, they have established 8 regional e-assessment centers, or NEAC and the REAC as it is being called. So the 8 centers are in Chennai, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad and Indore. So these are the 8 places where the regional e-assessment centers are there. But let us understand what is the roles of each of these. There are going to be 4 new units, 4 units that are going to be established under this e-assessment scheme. What are these 4 units? You have something called a assessment unit, a verification unit, a technical unit, and a review unit. What does this assessment unit? The assessment unit, they identify the issues to be raised, they seek information on the issues, they analyze the information, and then they draft the assessment order. The verification unit, on the other hand, they conduct inquiries, they examine books of accounts, cross-examination to be done. Tahsildar is there, so you need to ask questions, so you call him for cross-examination. This is not done by your assessing officer. It is done by what is called a verification unit. So the verification unit is the only unit that conducts inquiries, records statement, or has any kind of face time with the assessee. If you are the assessee, you don't know who the assessing officer is, but cross-examination is required. Then in that case, naturally you want to be present there. So in that case, you may ask, how can cross-examination be done, Abhishek, if it is faceless? it will be done through a verification unit. It is a separate team, either based out of Kumbakonam or Chennai or Vellore or some other place also, depending on the facts of the case. They will conduct the inquiries or conduct the cross examinations. So that is the duty of the verification unit. What about the technical unit? Remember in the earlier slide, I told you there is a term called functional specialization. I will come to that like that I told you. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, we are all professionals and we are all chartered accountants. It's a closed door, closed room meeting, closed door room meeting. So I can tell you something which is the reality. Normally, an assessing officer, and I have faced this situation, where in Chennai, one assessing officer, he is based in the exemptions ward, basically doing all 12AA and 80G, these kind of cases. He has been doing this for more than 15 to 20 years. Suddenly, for some reason, he is transferred into corporate ward or he is transferred to non-corporate ward. My assessee happens to have a capital gains case. Capital gains case. It deals with section 54F, where the assessee has two houses in apartment, single assessee. He has two houses, but they are on the same floor. He has broken the wall and he has joined the house. He sold some other land. He wants to reinvest and buy another house in the same apartment. So the assessee here, he takes a stand saying, I have only one house. Why? It may be two houses, but I have joined it and made it one house. Assessing officer, he reads the section 54F. What does 54F say? On the date of reinvestment, assessee should not hold more than one house property. He should not own more than one house property. This gentleman, he has only done exemption cases. He does not know what to do. So what will he do here? He will do a few things. This is what commonly assessing officers do. One, they will ask that auditor of the assessee to explain. So I will go and explain. But I am biased, because I am representing the assessee. So obviously I am going to argue in favor of the assessee. So who is the next person he will ask? He will ask the officer next door to him. He will go and say, sir, please explain. But that is little ego issue, because not all assessing officer can go and frankly try to ask freely. Third thing, he will try to study. Usually when you see assessing officers are transferred to a different ward, they will be studying for the first 2-3 weeks. They will be taking a book, whatever ready referencer that I have, my book when I used to give. Normally during transfer seasons only most calls I will get. Abhishek, I read this in your book. Can you please explain this point? So the most common thing they'll do is they will start to study to see the common issues that they get. Or the last option, they will ask some other auditor, some auditor they are friends with or they are comfortable with, they will call them and ask them to explain. This is what commonly assessing officers do. So it is fair to say that generally in the current scheme, where you have persons being randomly transferred from one ward to another ward, very commonly, they do not do justice to the additions because they are not familiar with the issues. I gave a simple issue of capital gains. But what if it is transfer pricing? What if it is ICDS or accounting related issue? What if it is an international taxation issue? These are all not things where for 2 weeks, if I study also, I will not be able to understand. It requires a specialized knowledge. So therefore, in the current scheme, before the e-assessment came, how it was is there was a real problem in delivering justice by the department side. Assessing officer did not do justice because they cannot be expected to also. Really, a person is doing exemption cases for 20 years. You are expecting him to come and do transfer pricing in the next week. Time barring cases coming, you are putting pressure on him to file. Do you think he'll be able to understand and do a proper job? Naturally, he cannot do it. It is practically impossible. So, department under this e-assessment scheme, they have established something called a technical unit. This technical unit, what they are going to do? They will be there to give specialized information. So I am an assessing officer. I have been in exemption ward. Today, suddenly I am getting a corporate ward ICDS related issue. What I will do? I will write a letter to the technical unit saying, please give me your report on this case. I am not sure. 54F is there. There are two houses he has. I am not sure whether I should allow or not because it looks like one house to me on the facts. But same time, there are two sale deeds. He has purchased two. The land is different. The property is different. So definitely, it looks like two houses. So what should I do? He will write. In the technical unit, there will be experts. There will be different verticals. TP experts, 5-10 people. Accounting experts, 5-10 people. Capital gain experts, 5-10 people. So when the news comes, oh, this is the case, these are the facts, he does not know whether 54F he can claim. They will send it to the capital gains experts. They will look at the case and they will say, no, in your jurisdiction, you cannot claim it because the most recent decision of the High Court in your place says that you have to consider it as two separate houses. Or they will say, no, it is the same house only. Make an addition in some other point and send it to us. So this is the sort of expert advice that the technical unit will give. So therefore, even in cases where your assessing officer is not equipped, he is not equipped to answer your questions, the technical unit will step in and they will give their expert views. What about the review unit? What about the review unit? I will explain what the review unit does in the next slide. But before that, remember there was one point I told you, team-based assessment. What it is, I will explain later. As you can see over here, the assessment unit, the verification unit, the technical unit, and the review unit, they are all working as one team. They're working together. They're working as one team. And what is interesting to note is all these functions that I told you was being done by a single person before. But however, now the department will have 4 teams, 4 sets of experts who do only that. I'll give you an example of the verification unit, how I won a case. What happened is this assessee's case, it was relating to an agricultural land. It was agricultural income that they had earned from it. We had the auditor who referred the case to me. In fact, I think it was somewhere near Kumbakonam only. The auditor who had referred the case to me. So what happened in that case? Assessee had agricultural land. He was earning agricultural income. The assessing officer, he wanted to check whether the assessing in the agricultural income was real or not. So we gave Adangal, we gave Chitta, we said, sir, see, paddy was being grown there, all that. So then what the assessing officer did? They called the Tahsildar. They called the old Tahsildar, not the current one. They called the old Tahsildar. He came. He has told them that he has given a statement to the department saying that it is not even a wetland, it is a dry land, it is not possible to grow crops. So we said, if that is the case, in Adangal Chitta, his name is there. All the details that he has given, this paddy crop was grown, etc. All this is there. How can he say that? So then department said, asked him. He said, no, they said they are going for a loan, sir. So I gave it like that. So then department wanted to make the addition. So what I said is that, or rather what the auditor at the time who was handling the case, is he called for a cross-examination. So cross-examination, the Tahsildar was called, the assessee was called, and the auditor was called. During the course of the cross-examination, I had advised the auditor how to go about what sort of questions he needs to ask to put pressure on the Tahsildar to explain his answers. And I also told the auditor, I told him, please record it. Please record it. What you do is take an audio recorder, you record the entire cross-objections. You tell the assessing officer beforehand also. You record the entire. They said, okay. So in the course of I heard the entire recording because we went on appeal. They passed an adverse order and I won the appeal. But I will tell you what happened in the course of cross-objection. In the course of cross-objection, the assessing officer, what he realized is the questions that the auditor was asking this Tahsildar was very strong questions. Tahsildar was struggling to give clear answers. So therefore, the case was being lost. Immediately, the assessing officer called the joint commissioner, whoever was her joint commissioner, she asked him to come. Joint commissioner came. He said, I have issued a summons to the assessee. You are the auditor. I want the assessee to be here. Assessee should only cross-examine. You cannot cross-examine. Auditor said, no, assessee does not even know Tamil. She is a North Indian. She is a senior citizen. She cannot come. So I only have to do it. How is she supposed to cross-examine? No, you can also be there, but assessee has to be there. So then he said, no, you cannot do that. You're not. He said, no, this is what it is. And they passed an order saying that nobody was present for cross-examination, and whatever submissions made by the Tahsildar, they noted it separately. They took his signature without my signature or without the auditor's signature, without the assessee signature, and they passed an order. When I went on appeal on this matter, I made a simple point. I said, summons to the assessee and cross-examination of Tahsildar, they are two separate things. You cannot combine them. You cannot say assessee has to only cross-examine. In this case, assessee is senior citizen. What if the assessee cannot even walk? What if the assessee is hospitalized? Will you take the person to the hospital and do the cross-examination? Or will you insist that they should come in a wheelchair and they should do the cross-examination? You want to do summons, you can do the summons. You want to say they have not come based on the summons, you say that. Do not link the summons and the cross-examination. They are two separate things. I also had the recording, but I did not even have to go there. All I had to say is cross-examination done behind the back of the assessee, not given an opportunity. And Joint Commissioner had intervened like this. They straight away allowed the case in our favor. They did not even check whether it is really agricultural land, whether really agricultural income is there, wetland, dry land, and they did not even go. The department had gone, taken photos of the land, etc. They did not even check that at the appeals. Straight away allowed. Now, this is an example of the verification unit not being aware of the procedure of cross-examination. The Joint Commissioner or the assessing officer in this case, they did not know that summons is not mandatory. Summons and cross-examination is separate. So when they linked it, straight away they have violated the provisions, and I easily won the case. So therefore, now in the verification unit also, you will have experts who are advised how the cross-examination should be done. You will have experts as to how inquiries should be conducted. So therefore, it is a team-based assessment where you have experts on each matter. So what is the procedure? We have discussed so much now. We have to understand what is the procedure. Now the next slide, when I show you, there are going to be a lot of lines, a lot of boxes, etc. Don't get confused. Once I explain it to you, it will become very, very clear. So I have tried to compile the entire e-assessment into a single slide. Normally when you see that runs into several pages on explaining e-assessment. With great difficulty, I have tried to put a flow chart. Now I have compiled everything into this one page so that it will be easy to understand. And once I finish explaining, you will appreciate that it is actually easy to understand. Now I'm going to enable my arrow. Is my cursor visible, sir? My arrow, is it visible?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
It is visible? Okay, excellent. The reason is I request members to just to follow my cursor, because after the first few things that I show the direction, you will be able to appreciate it better. In the middle, you have something called the NEAC, that is the National E-Assessment Center. When I complete the slide, you will appreciate why they are all powerful. You see, as far as the assessee is concerned, earlier, the assessee used to address the jurisdictional assessing officer. Henceforth, the assessee only interacts with the NEAC, nobody else. So the NEAC, they serve the notice on the assessee. So they send a notice to the assessee and they serve the notice on the assessee. The assessee submits his response. The assessee submits his response back to the NEAC. Then the NEAC, they will assign an assessment unit for the assessee. So the NEAC, if you can see point number 3 over here, they will assign the case to assessment unit. So why is this important? So one very critical thing, I already told you, in case your assessee is based in Kumbakonam, it will be assigned to somebody else. But what interestingly is happening in this is politically sensitive cases where the person, a politician or a mafia or a gunda or maybe even a corporate person, somebody with some kind of influence in that jurisdiction, he can exercise a pressure on that assessing officer in that same jurisdiction. If I'm a mafia boss and the assessing officer wants to make addition, he say, I'm going to make 3 additions in your case. I will send 30 people to his house that evening itself. I will say, do you really want to make the addition? He will say, no, sir, no addition. Very clean it is. Assessee has not made anything. No income, in fact, is there. So no addition can be made. So like that, they will give me a clean chit. So that is in case of mafia, gunda, all of these cases. This is all reality. It might seem like a funny thing, but politician pressure, pressure from mafia, pressure from other influential people in the location are common issues faced by assessing officer. In the new e-assessment scheme, they don't have to care who you are. Whether I'm a gunda based in Chennai, then it will be assessed by someone in UP. Whatever bad words I'm using, that person you will not understand. He will say, kya boss, kya chahiye, like that only he will say. Not only that, you won't even know who he is. So you won't know who is the assessing officer. You won't know where they are from. So therefore, the entire assessment will be without any influence, without any pressure, without any bias. So the NEAC decides who the case and where it goes to. So now the case has been assigned to the assessment unit. What does the assessment unit do? They are going through all the information you have shared. Then suddenly they are saying, no, I need more information. I need more information. I need more information from the assessee. So I want to request for more information. See, in 4A that you can see here, please follow my cursor. Request for more information from the assessee. They send this request to the NEAC. Ladies and gentlemen, the assessment unit do not send any communication directly to the assessee. They send it to the NEAC. The NEAC sends a notice for further information to the assessee. The assessee again submits his information back to the NEAC. The NEAC forwarded back to the assessment unit. So now assessment unit has got more information. Then they are saying, no, boss, this has to be cross-examined. This cannot be admitted by me. So cross-examination needs to be done. We already discussed in the earlier side. Assessment unit, do not do the cross-examination. So assessment unit here under 4B, they will request for a verification to be done. They will send this request not directly to the verification unit. They will send it back to the NEAC. The NEAC will assign a unit for the verification. So here, as I told you, verification unit is the only unit which has any sort of face time with the assessee. In complex cases, where let us take in Tamil Nadu, we are all aware Adangal Chitta is common for agricultural land, where it will only be in Tamil. There may be many other types of agreements which will only be in Tamil. So if it goes to a person, an assessing officer in Delhi, then no chance he will be able to understand this. So, even if you call our ICA helpline in Delhi, generally you talk in English also, they will talk only in Hindi. So therefore, the reality is, it might seem funny, but that is the truth. That is the truth. The truth is, sometimes people in several parts of India, they are comfortable only in Hindi, even if they know English. So if you expect them to translate your Adangal Chitta, impossible. That will not happen. So will that mean the assessment will be adverse for the assessee? So here there must be a reference made to the verification unit. There must be a reference made to the verification unit. The verification unit can be in Kumbakonam. It can be in Chennai also. So the cross-examination can be done in the same locality or in a different place where the person, he understands your language or he can do a proper job of verification. So therefore, the verification unit allocated by the NEAC will submit a report. They will prepare a report. These are the suggestions. These are our conclusions. These are our findings based on our verification, based on our cross-examination. This is the entire transcript. And they will send this suggestion not to the assessment unit. Again, they will also send it back to the NEAC, who will forward it to assessment unit. So therefore, assessment unit also does not know who the verification unit is. Verification unit doesn't know which officer has forwarded it. As far as the units are also concerned, everything comes only from the NEAC. Everything comes only from the NEAC. So now the NEAC, they have given the report based on the verification unit to the assessment unit. Now assessment unit, after everything, they are compiled, they are looking at it. Suddenly they see, oh, it is a capital gains issue. I have been only in exemptions ward. What do? They will hear 4C. They will request for technical assistance and they will send this again to the NEAC. They will not send it directly to the technical unit. They will send the facts to NEAC. NEAC will allocate the technical unit. Oh, it is a capital gains matter. I will allocate the capital gains technical unit. Oh, it is a TP matter. I will put the TP unit. So here, if you see in 5C, the request for technical assistance is forwarded to the technical unit. Technical unit, they will go through everything. Oh, okay, these are the facts. Yes, correct. What you do is, this is the point. This is the case laws. Refer to all of this. Make this addition. They will send a report. So this report again goes back to NEAC. NEAC forward it to the assessment unit. So now the learned assessing officer, he wanted more information. He got that. He wanted verification, cross-examination to be done. It has done. He has got that. He wanted technical assistance to be done. That has also been done. He has got that. So finally, equipped with all of this, he drafts what is called a draft assessment order. Number 6, if you follow my arrow, you can see a draft assessment order is prepared by the assessment unit and sent to the NEAC. Now, the reason it is called a draft assessment order, you will understand. Remember, there is a 4th unit called the review unit. I did not explain it in the previous slide. What does this review unit do? You see, I am an expert in appeals and I handle appeal cases at the ITAT almost on a daily basis. So whether it is me or whether it is anybody else who is an expert in appeals, one common thing that you will find is, however strong your case is, whatever strength you have in your case, they will never start the arguments on the grounds of appeal on merits. They will always start on a technical point. Now, for example, when a reopening has to be done, reopening of assessment, beyond 4 years, there are a few criteria that has to be satisfied. Now, what are the criteria? The criteria are, 1, if it is beyond 4 years, the income sought to be escaped should be at least 1 lakh or more. Okay, satisfied. If it is more than 1 lakh also, approvals from the joint commissioner or the principal commissioner must be obtained where reopening is beyond 4 years. It has been obtained also. But that assessing officer has not included that in his assessment order. Now, when I go and appeal against it, the merit might be very strongly in my favor, very strongly in my favor. But if you go only on merits, sometimes we have found in the tribunals, even at the tribunal level or CIT appeals level, the case you may lose it. But technical points where the assessing officer makes a drafting error, it may be something as simple. Assessing officer, he may be from a very normal background where his access to drafting or his quality of drafting is not great. His knowledge is there. He knows everything. He's checked all the facts, but he is not able to draft properly. Or he gives it to his junior, his assistant for drafting, and they make a mistake in drafting. So what they do, they don't mention in that assessment order that approvals have been obtained. So what I will do when I go on appeal, I will start only at the one point. Even if the merits are very weak in my case, the case is against me, however strong the department might be, I will start with the technical point. I will say that approval should have been obtained. Even if it has been obtained, it has not been brought out in the assessment order. Hence, the order should be quashed. Straight away, the tribunal will hold. Yes, I agree with you, Abhishek, quashed. They will not even go and check the merits of the case. So therefore, the drafting of assessing officers was considered to be subpar. They were not good enough. It was a great advantage for people like me, where we used to use it as an option for us in appeal. So even if the case is weak, we will try and to win the case on a technical point. So now they have a review unit. The job of this review unit is to ensure that that assessment order which has been drafted correctly in consonance with the requirements as per law, with whether all the technical points have also been covered. So they will check, Mr. Assessing Officer, you say that it has been reopened. Have you got the approvals? Yes, sir, I've got approvals. Why have you not included it here? Please add a line saying all approvals have been obtained from the Joint Commissioner or the Principal Commissioner. So that has to be given. So they will forward the draft assessment order to the review unit. The review unit, either they will agree, yes, everything is correct, or they will give suggestions. So they will give suggestions on how to improve the order. The NEAC, again, they will send it back to the assessment unit with the suggestions. They will ask them to redraft the order to the assessment unit. Once again, they will draft the assessment order. And here, this is a very, very important point, which is favorable to the assessee. After all of this, after this entire process that I've told you, the assessment order normally is being passed. There have been several scenarios, be it my own cases or cases that I've handled on appeal of other auditors. One very common issue that people have found. I'll give you an example of a case that I recently, or rather I'm handling currently. What happened in this case? The auditor for the assessee, he is appeared at the assessment level. The addition made pertains to long-term capital gains on sale of shares. There's been a conflict of opinions here. So the entire course of the assessment procedure, it was done manual assessment only, where the auditor has gone and explained all the facts, he's given all the details, and the assessing officer, he said, yes, but I won't agree. End of the day, auditor has briefed the client. See, sir, he may make a disallowance. He may disallow section 1038 for you. So there may be an addition to the extent of the value of the sale. Suddenly, even after all these discussions, when that assessment order is passed, that assessing officer, he's added the long-term capital gains, he is disallowed, and he's added the entire sale consideration. Okay, no problem. But he has made another addition. He has made an addition saying details of source of investment has not been given by the assessee. So therefore, entire source has been added also. Again, ridiculous. It was a ridiculous addition. And the auditor is saying, Abhishek, through my entire assessment proceedings, question of source never came up. Question of source never came up. I don't know that this addition was being done. Behind my back, this addition has been made. So therefore, we have gone on appeal, and I'm sure we'll win it on appeal. But the fact remains that when I'm going on appeal, 20% of the demand that assessing officer is going to ask. That 20% of demand is very, very high, because when a matter of source comes up, you don't have enough capital, the assessing officer is saying. He's added such a large amount of money there as undisclosed capital or unexplained sources. So when this sort of thing happens, this sort of issue happens, let me tell you, it is a huge matter of concern, because today we all know how much pressure assessing officers are putting on either on the auditor or on the assessee, saying ask your assessee to pay the tax, 20% at least you pay. Are you going under Vivad Se Vishwas scheme? Can you immediately ask him to pay the tax? How much time you need? These are all kinds of pressure tactics are there today. And assessees, really, the economic scenario is not great. So therefore, for them also, they don't have the money to pay. So during high-pitched assessment orders like this, where additions are made behind the back of assessee, it is very, very unfair. It is very, very unfair. For everything, we cannot go use influence, speak to the principal commissioner, say, please, sir, you speak to the joint commissioner, give us some time, let the appeal finish. No, gone are the days where assessing officers wait, they give you time. They say, okay, you finish the appeal. They are also given high targets, so they are also under pressure. So they are constantly attaching bank accounts, freezing the money, freezing the accounts. All these are reality. So we had made a representation that this should be stopped. And this is one of the good things that have come from the e-assessment, is that now, even after this entire process, even after the review unit gives the suggestion, there will be a show cause notice, a final show cause notice given to the assessee, saying that do you have any problems with the potential additions that are going to come in the assessment order. You can respond to that, and you can put it on record that they have not given you an opportunity. An addition is being made on source where there was no discussion at all throughout the assessment proceedings. Now only he wants to make that addition. I have not had an opportunity. Then at assessment stage itself, they will give you the opportunity, or Even if they don't give you the opportunity, you have it on record that opportunity is not given. So when you go on appeal, it will be very, very easy for you to win. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to prove it at that stage. Everything is there on record. So this is the overall e-assessment procedure at a glance. Once you respond to that show cause notice, then only the final assessment order will be passed. So this is the entire e-assessment procedure. I hope now it is very clear for you, because initially I'm sure this slide would have been very complex. So many lines, so many boxes are there. So now I hope you have got clarity on the e-assessment procedure. Now, what are the powers of NEAC? Now, we have covered many of this, and there is one power only that we haven't. I will get to that. Send notices, we know. Assign cases to assessment unit, we have discussed. Allocate cases to technical unit, verification unit, review unit, that also we know. Review the draft assessment order, yes, we know that. Provide the assessee an opportunity, yes, that goes without saying. Verification unit will do that. The last one, transfer to the assessing officer for post-assessment work, or during assessment also. You might say, Abhishek, for so long, 1 hour you have been talking. You have been telling us that it is compulsory. Suddenly now you are saying you can transfer it during assessment also. Wait a minute, I will explain why. Before that, let us see how a national the e-assessment notice looks like. Some of you may have got a pilot run. Your clients may have got e-assessment notices, so you might have seen it. For people who have not, this is what your notice looks like. It is almost identical to any other notice that you have received. Only difference is, normally in the box here on top where you have National E-Assessment Center, NEAC over here, you used to have the jurisdictional officer, non-corporate ward, or corporate ward 1-2, or jurisdictional ward, or circle 1-2, like that used to be there. Now no ward is there, it is only the National E-Assessment Center. Also here is the section. I told you there is a new section for the e-assessment proceedings. That section will be quoted. And of course, below, normally signature will be there of the assessing officer. Now only the NEAC will be there. So important question. What does the jurisdictional assessing officer do? A gentleman, after many years of effort, he's written the IAS exam. He has rejected IAS, he's rejected IPS, and he has joined IRS. He has got posted in Chennai or Kumbakonam. Or inspectors, after so many years of service, they have been promoted. Suddenly they are saying e-assessment scheme. So what is that gentleman who is sitting in Kumbakonam? What is he going to be doing? What is his role now? So his role has been watered down into a few things. Collection and recovery of demand. So after the order is passed by the e-assessment, he will call you. Sir, Abhishek sir, an amount is pending from your client. Please follow up and get it. Otherwise, we'll have to freeze the bank account. How much time you want that he will be doing? Collection, recovery of demand. Rectification under section 154, where error is apparent on the face of the record of the order, then rectification can be done. So in these cases, that assessing officer, he will come and rectify. Giving effect to appellate orders. I go on appeal against the e-assessment order. Appellate authority, they say, no, you're right. This should not be done. Please quash this addition. So I send it back to the assessing officer to quash the addition. So in that case, it will come to assessing officer. Whatever the ITAT has said or whatever the CIT appeals has said, he has to give effect to that. The last one is the major discretionary power. Proposal to launch prosecution proceedings. Ladies and gentlemen, one very, very common thing I have seen in almost 70% of our cases, it can go to prosecution. 70% of cases where additions are being made, there can be prosecution proceedings that can be launched. As simple as not filing the return of income, then also they can launch prosecution proceedings. So therefore, if that is the case, where you can launch prosecution proceedings for everything, the assessing officer or the department, they have been kind enough not to do it for us. They have been kind enough not to do it. But now, in your jurisdictional officer, yes, I told you, so many years effort he has put, so much power he has enjoyed for so long. Suddenly you're removing all the powers. He has become toothless, except for one tooth. Whether he will use that tooth to bite or not, that again depends on a person to person thing. But my view is that I have a feeling, because of this e-assessment scheme, the number of prosecution proceeding cases will go up. You start seeing more notices being issued, So prosecution cases will start going up. So this is a new opportunity that will come up for chartered accountants. Yes, e-assessment denies certain opportunities, but it opens doors for some opportunities also. So prosecution proceedings, be prepared. I'm expecting a lot more notices to now come. Personal appearance will take place in the following scenarios, where books of accounts has to be examined, cross-examination has to be done, or where the assessee specifically requests for a personal hearing through the online portal. So this is, I'll give you the example. My assessee is illiterate. He does not know anything other than Tamil. So he cannot submit his answers online. And Delhi officer is not going to speak Tamil. So he may request for a personal hearing to be done. So in those cases, they may say, okay, I'll schedule a personal hearing for you in Kumbakonam itself. You go and you appear there and you submit your whatever request you want through personal hearing. So this is an exceptional scenario where it will be done. Do I have option to opt out of the scheme? No, no option. It is now compulsory. From October 2019 to March 2020, a pilot run was being done. But from 1st April onwards, irrespective of who your assessee is, you don't have an option to opt out of the scheme. One common question people ask me is, what if my proceedings are already going on? I already got a notice physically, cases are going on. In those cases, department have clarified where your proceedings have already commenced through the physical mode or through the email assessment, that will continue in the same mode unless you get a fresh notice directing e-assessment to be done. It will be done in the physical mode only. It will be done in the physical mode only. Following cases, e-assessment not required. Now there's a major change here based on last time I presented in Kumbakonam. In fact, we had discussed this point. I distinctly remember discussing it in Kumbakonam because many people ask me this question. I'll tell you what it is. Assessments framed under 153A, 153C, such cases, e-assessment cannot be done. Reopening cases or survey cases we know it is not possible to do it because search and survey cases, the amount of information collected sometimes is huge in number or very large in number. It is not possible to do a proper, e-assessment. It is better to do physically. What about reopening of cases? For now, reopening of cases will still be done physically only. It will not be done through the email. Why am I saying for now? Because last time I addressed in Kumbakonam, at the time, best judgment assessment, 144 cases, also had to be done physically only. I'll give you an example of how the scheme was. Before, that is before Finance Act 2020, what they said is that where there is a notice issued under the e-assessment scheme, the assessee does not respond, they send a second notice. Assessee does not respond, they send a third notice. Assessee does not respond, they send a fourth and final notice. For that also, assessee does not respond. Then under the e-assessment scheme, they said, in that case, best judgment assessment should be done. However, best judgment should be done only by the physical or jurisdictional officer. So send it to that assessing officer in Kumbakonam. He will send a notice to the assessee, show cause notice. Why should best judgment assessment not be done? Please prove it. Assessee will say, no, I did not get the notice. So you do it. Then it will be done physically only. So what started happening? People stopped replying to the e-assessment notices altogether. They said anyway they will issue a show cause notice saying we'll do best judgment. At that time, I will go to the physical officer, I'll get it done physically only. So no need to do best judgment is what people felt. But in Finance Act 2020, the government have corrected this. They have now said best judgment assessment will also be done under the e-assessment scheme. They need not go to the physical officer because it will be an abuse. It will be a device they will use to go back to the physical assessment. So therefore, under 144, you will be done through e-assessment. Similarly, 147, for now, it is going to be done physically. But my view, it can be done through the online portal also. There's nothing stopping them doing it from the online portal. Whatever procedure they are following currently, same thing can be followed for that also. But for now, they have kept it on hold. Maybe over the next year or the next 2 years, based on the success of the assessment scheme, they may reintroduce 147. The next case where e-assessment need not be done, their assessment has been set aside by appellate authorities. For example, there's a recent case called Salem Shri Vilas Chit Funds. In this case, what happened was the learned assessing officer, they had gone through e-assessment in the pilot scheme. It had come. In fact, this decision came during the lockdown, where they had to be done by the verification unit examining the books of record, books of accounts. The assessee had requested. He said the books of accounts are very voluminous, so please put somebody in their place in Salem. They said put an assessee here. I will go and produce the books. I cannot scan it and upload. It is not possible for me to do. What happened? They did not give this assessee that opportunity. So finally, the order was passed, adverse order was passed. The assessee went directly to the Madras High Court. He said, e-assessment scheme, they have not given me an opportunity. So what did the judge say? The judge said, yes, e-assessment, great, very transparency, all of that important, undesirable practices you want to stop, excellent. But the purpose is you should give the assessee an opportunity. The assessee should be given an opportunity. If you are not giving him an opportunity to represent his case, then you're denying him justice. Whether whatever unit you want to call, verification unit, technical unit, you call them by whatever name you want. I don't care. They have to be given an opportunity. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm sending it back to the assessing officer, but I am sending it to the jurisdictional assessing officer. I am not sending it to the e-assessment scheme. So therefore, where the appellate authorities, be it the CIT appeals, ITAT, High Court or Supreme Court, where they think that physical assessment only should be done in those cases, then it will be set aside back to your jurisdictional assessing officer in Kumbakonam, Vellore or Chennai only. What if internet connectivity is poor? Your assessee is based out of Kashmir. You know that for the last 6 months till June, Kashmir did not have internet. For 6 months, they did not have internet. So therefore, if my assessee is based in Kashmir and e-assessment, no, assessing officer is based in Chennai. He is sending notice after notice. You are not responding. Where is your response? Please submit the following documents. I've given you a checklist. You have not given anything. Best judgment assessment going to be done. Is it fair at all? Because then he will go, he will attach the bank account. They will seize the money from the assessee's account. Assessee is sitting in Kashmir. He is not even aware that e-assessment has been done, let alone assessment order has been passed. So therefore, in cases where the internet connectivity is poor or it is a notified area, the principal commissioner or the principal DGIT, in either of them may write to the NAAC and say that no e-assessment should be done in that case. For example, when Aircel went out of business, few pockets of Chennai were very, very deeply affected because some people in that area, they happen to use Aircel effectively. So when they use Aircel, naturally, if Aircel goes out of business, many assessees don't have internet. So they cannot do e-assessment till they get a new connection. So therefore, that is another example of a scenario where e-assessment is not possible at all. Exceptional circumstances owing to administrative difficulty, the principal commissioner, he may record reasons as to why it should be done by manual assessment only. So therefore, and also I request all of you, if you have any questions, please start typing it out in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to take up questions. What I will do is, due to want of time, I will do the questions pertaining to e-assessment first, and then I will cover the e-assessment procedures. So if you type out the questions now, it will be great because we are nearly at the end of the e-assessment. We will discuss the questions for that and then proceed to certain critical practical aspects of assessment procedures. So exceptional circumstances owing to administrative difficulty, principal CIT may record the reason for manual assessment. So therefore, the principal CIT, he has the power to write to the NAAC and say, in Abhishek's case, don't do e-assessment. There's a problem. So please do it physically. Now, one more question that I got asked. I spoke in Gurgaon branch recently, and they asked me, Abhishek, principal commissioner, very close friend of mine. Can I tell him in all of my assessees cases to write and give? You can tell. But remember, where the principal commissioner, he writes to the NAAC, every single case that he wants a manual assessment to be done, he has to specify the reasons why manual assessment should be done. Not only that, each case will be reviewed by CBDT why that principal commissioner has asked for manual assessment. So therefore, his promotion, his transfers, his raise, everything is on the line. So even if he's your best friend, he's your brother also, they may think twice for doing it for all cases. So therefore, they'll be very, very careful where they are doing the transfer to be done by the manual assessment. So finally, what should we do as auditors, as lawyers, as representatives? What should we do for the assessee? First thing, update the contact number and email ID. Ensure that you are putting the assessee's email ID. We have already discussed this. Get good scanning equipment. Normally, chartered accountants at their office, we have an office boy or an office girl who all their job is to go to the income tax and submit the documents, get the tapal seal and come back. That is all they used to do. Suddenly now it is going to be e-assessment. So no point of going tapal, no point of going to the person. So instead, train that office boy or train that office girl how to scan documents. That is only more important now. So get good scanning equipment and ask them to do it. Today, using the phone itself, you have good scanners. So get a good app. You can take photos also to scan them. Improve the quality of drafting and presentations. This is the most important point, because earlier, all of us have heard this very cliched lines. How you should present your argument, how you should present your appeal. They used to tell us how you should go to the assessing officer, you should sit up straight, please wear a suit, wear a tie, make sure you're well groomed, you should not go with a beard, you have to sit, your back should be straight, you should look in the eye of the assessing officer. All of this we would have heard, and how to present the arguments. Confidently, you have to present all that. Today, ladies and gentlemen, there is no assessing officer sitting opposite you. All of your submissions, everything that you're submitting has to be done by the piece of paper you are writing in. So therefore, the quality earlier, maybe your drafting skills could have been poor, or maybe you could not communicate it properly in the paper, but you had an opportunity to go meet him physically. So you may have been able to explain, maybe even in our mother tongue, in Tamil also we might have explained. But the fact remains that now all of those tips, all of the conversations, everything is gone. Everything is gone. The quality of your submissions is paramount. So all of your client's case is being reflected in that piece of paper on the Word document that you are uploading. So ensure that your drafting skills are on point, that you are clear in your drafting, you are clear as to your case laws, you are clear how to go for it. It is a specialized skill. It is an art. Drafting is not something that is casual. It is an art. We have to take it up seriously and try to ensure that we communicate our views or we communicate our issues clearly. Prepare and submit prompt replies to all notices. For example, when we are doing physical assessment, the hearing will be scheduled today at 5 o'clock. Correctly 4:30, I get a call from my house. Something happened. You come home. We have to take somebody to the doctor, like that. So I will not go for the case. But next day morning, first thing in the morning, I will go to the assessing officer. I will tell him, sir, sorry, emergency happened yesterday. Is it okay if I come? No, he said, no problem, Abhishek, you come. So there was this casual sort of approach that we did, and it was a fact. This is how we were doing it. But now, under the e-assessment scheme, if they say you have to submit your documents in 15 days, that means in 15 days only you have to submit. 16th day, that window will be closed. At 12 o'clock midnight, that window will be closed. So even if you want to submit, you cannot submit. So therefore, be very careful. Ensure you promptly reply to all your submissions, because if there is any sort of delay, we are dealing with computers, we are dealing with persons who we don't know, we can't see. So therefore, we must be prompt in our responses, not to take too many adjournments, not miss responding to the notices. And the final point, take up appeals very, very, very seriously. You're going to see a spate of assessment orders now going to be passed, where earlier they used to be given in the favor of the assessee for whatever reason, because of your drafting skills, because of your ability to present, whatever it is, the case used to be given in favor of assessee. In fact, sometimes just we used to maintain good relationships with the assessing officer, where we used to say, assessing officer will tell, this case you don't do anything. So I will say, okay, sir, I will not go on appeal. Next case, at least you please help. So you say, yeah, Abhishek, I will help you. Come next case, I will help. This is a fact. This is a fact that this is happening very, very practically. But now, we, by not going on appeal for our client, we are doing an injustice for the client. So my submission, any sort of adverse order that is coming under the e-assessment scheme, challenge it by appeal. Go on appeal. It is worthwhile. It is worthwhile. because even if the CIT appeals is not very favorable to you, trust me, the ITAT is excellent. The ITAT is very, very good. They will give you excellent orders. I am going on a daily basis and I'm seeing and I'm arguing, I'm winning so many cases. I'm arguing so many cases. I'm seeing other people argue and win cases. The ITAT has members who are chartered accountants, who are lawyers, who are practicing. Unlike the CIT appeals, where they are normally a assessing officer or ACIT, he is promoted to become a CIT or is transferred to become a CIT. But at the ITAT, it is not simply the income tax officers. They are judges, they are members who are chartered accountants, they are members who are lawyers. So therefore, they will really hear you. They will really hear your case and they will give you a favorable order. So therefore, earlier, in order to maintain the relationship with the assessing officer, we did not go on appeal. So now I am imploring you, definitely go on appeal if you get an adverse order. The chances of winning are very, very high. So with this, maybe we'll take a few questions on e-assessment and then we'll move on to assessment procedures. Is that okay, Visahan sir? Or
Yes, sir. Yes, you can proceed, sir.
yeah? Okay. Sundaravardhan sir, is that okay?
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, proceed.
Okay. Suryanarayanan sir has asked, is there any threshold of limit of income of being brought to e-assessment? Sir, there is no threshold. No limit is there. All cases will be done through e-assessment after 1st April. Praveen Kumar sir from Vellore, whether rectification can be filed with the jurisdictional AO for e-assessment cases. Yes, rectification can be filed, sir. 154 falls under the power of the jurisdictional officer. But remember, 154 is only for prima facie issues, error apparent on the record. So if there is an issue that we are debating with, we cannot fix it in 154. We must go on appeal only. We must go on appeal only. Or you can go for 264. My view is appeal is better. CS Adagopan. Sir, what is the file upload size? Whether manual books of account will also be scanned? Is there any loophole? Sadagapan sir, excellent practical question that he has asked. One big challenge that we are facing under the e-assessment scheme is limitation of file size. I gave you an example of a recent Madras High Court case where they wanted the documents to be verified in person because some companies, your daily transactions itself goes into thousands or hundreds of transactions. And sometimes certain assessing officers, they will say, bring the bank statement. Oh, we used to take bundles. We'll spiral bind it and we'll go and we'll submit it to them. Now we cannot spiral bind. They don't expect, they expect us to scan everything. So that is a very, very silly expectation. Not only that, they have a 9 MB size limit. 9 MB size limit. So how are you going to attach everything in 9 MB? Impossible for you to do it. So this is an example where you can ask for physical assessment. So use this as a loophole, sir. As you said, Sadagopan sir, you can use this as a loophole if you want. But of course, sometimes your assessing officer in e-assessment, he might say, upload your bank statements. I'll say it's not possible. I'll go meet the Kumbakonam officer only. You please transfer the case to Kumbakonam, like that he'll say. He will say, you know what, I don't want bank statement. You give the other details, he may say. So be very careful when you are using it. So use it very sparingly. Definitely, if it is a genuine case, you can more than happily ask for a physical assessment to be done, or you can ask for a jurisdictional officer to physically verify it and submit his report. K.S. Ravi Kumar sir, what are the likely scan uploads and size? Sir, as I told you, likely size is 9 MB is what I've heard, and up to 10 files you can have. Currently it is 5 MB. They want to increase it to 9 MB now. My view, 9 MB also not enough. PDF files, if you want to have clarity, not enough. Why I have said, one example, I'll give you another example of why appeals is very, very important. Sometimes when we are scanning hundreds documents or 200 documents like that, it will get smudged, paper will not be clear, the clarity may get foiled, there may be blurring where we are taking with our photo, we may move the phone while taking the photo, so blur will be there. So all of these are practical and real issues that we will all face. But as I told you, it's an impersonal assessment, impartial assessment. In these kind of scenarios, if that guy is sitting in Delhi, he says, oh, he is not uploaded properly, adverse order, then gone. It may have been a genuine document. It may have been explaining. For example, you are uploading a sale deal. The page where the purchase consideration is coming, that page is blurred. He may say, no, you are deliberately avoiding. You are not giving the details. You are trying to deceive me. And he may pass adverse order.
But the truth is, you are scanning 100 documents, in that one page got smudged. So these are all reality which is going to happen in e-assessment. That is why I am repeatedly saying appeals is now a new vertical. Whether you are an expert or not, refer it to someone you want. If not, best thing you yourself become an expert in that, because appeals will play a very, very key role. Will play a key role. By not going on appeal, genuine cases for associates will be losing. So you have a greater chance of winning it on appeal. Any other questions we have, sir? And this you can ask also if you want, even if you are not typing. Yes, Rajesh sir.
சார் அப்பீல் வந்து மேனுவல் அது டைரக்ட் இன்டராக்ஷன் தானே சார், இன்டர்நெட் கிடையாதுல்ல?
இல்ல சார், இப்போ இந்த ஃபினான்ஸ் ஆக்ட் 2020ல ஃபினான்ஸ் மினிஸ்டர் has announced saying e-appeal will be done, but there's no process yet. They have announced saying this is the procedure how e-appeals will be done. In fact, நான் கூட representation கொடுத்திருக்கேன் from All India Taxpayer Association. Also we have given a representation saying that appeals should not be done online. The whole purpose of appeal itself, I have been aggrieved by something that has happened below. I want to explain. For example, I am aggrieved by the e-assessment done. Will I come again on e-mode and explain again? The whole purpose is lost. I could not scan 100 documents. So therefore, they have passed adverse order, my grounds of appeal. Then it goes to e-appeals. E-appeals there. Please scan all the 100 documents. Again, they are saying. Then what is the purpose? Now, you appeal pono. In the other 100 documents scan pani. Everything cannot go to ITAT. That is what we have requested, and we have made a submission to the Finance Ministry. We are hoping it will be received positively, because in my view, appeals should never be done online. It should be done physically. For example, I'll tell you something. Currently, ITAT cases, I am appearing for ITAT cases every day. Every day cases are going on now, but we are using a platform like WebEx, where like Zoom we are using today. Like that, WebEx is being used. So judges are sitting, they are hearing the cases. And if you cannot argue, they are giving adjournment. Till this corona ends, we will give you adjournment, 6 months adjournment, 7 months adjournment. They are willing to give it, but they are also hearing the cases. So at least through Zoom, through Skype, through WebEx, something should be done. You should not simply say it should be done through portal. You submit, you upload, I will see what I want. That should not be done. That is my view. Hopefully the Finance Minister also agrees with that. We are waiting to see. But right now, sir, Rajesh sir, she has announced, Finance Minister said there will be appeal, but nothing has been codified.
Sir, so far I have uploaded 3 times all the documents, scanned documents legibly.
Yeah.
To my mind, it is very legible.
Yes,
Even after that, they are asking it is not very clear. What I have to do?
Sir, that is what
The
I told you,
document is
sir.
very crystal clear. The
Sir,
document
as I
is very
told-
crystal clear to my mind.
I have no doubt, sir. In fact, Kumarvel sir, you will be surprised.
Mhm.
I will tell you one case that I handled. This auditor happens to be from Pondicherry. They referred this case to me. What happened in this case? Time barring case. 31st of December, the assessing officer should have passed the order. What happened is, this auditor, he is promising to me, saying, Abhishek, I promise on my mother. We are going on appeal on this case. He is saying, I promise on my mother, Abhishek, 11:50 p.m., midnight 11:50 p.m. I checked the e-filing portal. The assessee did not have any order. He did not have any order. 4 days later, January 4th, January 1st was New Year's. So
Yeah.
next Saturday, Sunday or something, January 4th, he has gone. He has checked whether any order is there. Yes, there is an order which has been uploaded, and it is dated 31st December.
Yeah.
31st December, the order is dated. Now, I personally didn't face this, but that auditor, many cases I'm handling for him. There's no reason he has to lie to me. He's saying, Abhishek, I promise on my mother, 31st December, nothing was there. So many questions, really. How can the department, after time barring date, how can they backdate and upload? It is highly unfair. It is highly unfair. An email has not been received by the client, but they are raised the demand. They are asking for the demand. We have gone on appeal on this, and I'm sure I will win it. But the practical question remains, how can they even do it? How is this allowable? The whole purpose, when you hear digital, we all keep hearing, there will be digital trail, audit trail will be there. We know when they have uploaded, timestamp. For everything, I can't go to ITAT. ITAT cannot say you check everything. So therefore, there must be checks and balances. And to answer your question, Kumaravel sir, really, we know that it is proper, but this is an exact scenario where we don't know who the assessing officer is. We cannot go and give him the document. they'll create problems like this. They will make the addition. We can only fight it by appeal. So, sir, my only request to you is you submit that it is clear in your documents. You make another submission saying that it is clear, everything is clear, but they are saying it is not clear. So that when you go on appeal, we can say that it is clear. You please send it to the physical officer. I will go to Kumbakonam officer and explain. That is only better.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more
Sir?
questions, sir? Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
sir, the second question should be if there is any limitation instead of I put a loophole. Because when the assessing officer verify the advertisement expenses or repairs and maintenance
Yes.
to check whether 48(3) has been violated,
Yes.
he find out some capital asset, some shed has been erected. So when he turn up the pages of the books of account, he can able to call out the loan 216SS or 260. So many things he can generate from the physical verification of the books of account.
Yes.
So that has been not provided in e-assessment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I put the word. Instead of that, I have put some word. It should be a limitation. If there is any limitation.
Limitation means, okay, I'm actually covering this in the next part of my presentation. But since Adagopan sir, you have asked, I will answer it. By limitation, you mean jurisdictional limitation, whether assessing officer can go into other matters, sir?
No, not. By
Time
turning
limitation.
up the pages of the books of account,
Yes.
he can able to know
Correct.
all other violations.
That is
If
what.
happened,
Yes,
in
no,
the
I
books of
understood.
account,
I
he can
understood.
able.
I
So
understood.
because that books of accounts are not produced,
No, I understand. I
whether
understand
that
your
has
question.
been omitted.
Whether he can go into other matters, you're saying.
Yeah.
So this is a very good question, pertinent question, and I was going to cover it later on, but I'll cover this. I'll answer sir's question. I'll answer one more common question that is being asked to me regularly. First, to answer sir's question, can your assessing officer go into other matters also? For example, I am getting a notice now asking for details about a sale of my land. So during that, he asks us, give me the bank statement also. I want to see the details of the bank credits that you have got. While viewing the bank credits, suddenly it comes to light, you have a fixed deposit. You are getting interest from fixed deposit. You have not disclosed anywhere, several lakhs you are getting, and you have not disclosed. So what he does, he makes an addition on that also. So he asks, get me the FDR. Is the FDR closed? Why have you not disclosed? What is this interest income? They will ask. Normally, physically also, if we go, Sadagopan sir gave an example. So can your e-assessment do it? Yes, there is no limitation. There is a practical limitation. Like you said, physically turning of the pages gives you easily, you can correlate things. But when you're doing scrolling on your computer, you're opening a PDF file and you're scrolling, it is not that easy for you to pick that out. But if your assessing officer is smart enough, or maybe he is taking physical printouts over there and he's seeing everything, then he can go into any other matter. There is no restriction on that. This e-assessment is not any different from how your regular assessment is being done. So therefore, however your regular assessment is, whatever they can do, same thing that officer also can do. But the pertinent point here that I want to make is limited scrutiny versus complete scrutiny. I am sure many of you are facing this, where you go for a limited scrutiny. Your case is picked up for limited scrutiny. So for example, nowadays 26 years, it has become like a passport where all the details gets uploaded in your 26 years. So in your 26 years, there is one new update. Assessee has purchased a land for a high value during the year. So the assessing officer, he wants to see more details. It is getting picked up for scrutiny because of that. So while going through it, he finds that, okay, you have purchased a land. Where did you get the money from purchase? So you are explaining. Then he says, oh, is that so? You have been doing business. Yes, sir, I'm doing very successful business. Give me the details of your business. Okay, I give him details. He said, give me the P&L. Sir, here is the P&L. Show me your sale consideration, sir. Sales. This is my sales that I have made, sir. Oh, get me some invoices for your sales. This is the invoice. How do you manufacture your product for selling? Sir, I have employees, I have manufacturing units, etc. Oh, you have fixed assets? Yes, sir, I have fixed assets. Give the details of fixed assets. Sir, this is the details of fixed assets. Oh, this is the details of fixed assets. Who operates this unit? Sir, I have 100 employees who operate this unit. Who are the employees? Sir, I have the list. Get me the pay slip. Sir, I have the pay slip for 9 months. 1 month I will get you. You are not giving the details. So therefore, I am making an addition. Can you do that in a limited scrutiny where they are seeking? What is the scrutiny starting for? It is starting for purchase of land, purchase of your capital gains related immovable property. There's a purchase. From there it is starting. What and all he is asking? He is asking for your business. He is asking for your sales receipts. He is asking for details of fixed assets. From there, he is going to your payroll and he is asking for a pay slip. You are not able to produce one pay slip. He wants to make addition there. Can he even ask for all these details? So this is a very, very critical point. Your limited scrutiny can be converted into a full scrutiny. There is no limitation on that, except there has to be an approval obtained from your joint commissioner or your principal commissioner. And he must explain to them, saying that he has reason to believe there is other income that is escaping. And after he gets this approval, then only he can go into other matters. Where there is no proof, nothing, he cannot simply do roving inquiries. They call it fishing expedition or roving inquiries, where simply just to harass the taxpayer or just to see what he will get out of it. You give me this, you bring me that, you bring me fixed asset register, you bring me bank statement, like that they cannot ask. So limited scrutiny can be converted to a full scrutiny only if the pertinent approvals are obtained. I hope that answers the question, Sadagopin sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question is there? Okay, we will quickly now go to the second part of the presentation then. Oh, somebody has raised their hand. Okay, nobody is there. Fine. Oh, chat one question has come, I think. Ganesan sir, if data is to be filed is beyond the size allowed, can we upload the same, say in a Dropbox or Google Drive, and upload the link for the assessing officer to view? We can try, sir. That is a novel solution. But the whole idea is they don't want it to go beyond the income tax portal. Everything should be uploaded on the portal only. You can put a Google form link, etc. But remember, the whole point is faceless assessment. It is possible through uploading outside, you are disclosing information that normally would have been not available to the assessing officer. That is a fear that is there. Currently, there is no procedure saying you are not allowed, so you can do it. But the fear is if they have a problem later on, they will say that you are trying to circumvent it, you are trying to get in touch with the officer, all that they can say. So just better be careful. And we ask for physical assessment. Anyway, better if you get physical assessments are for us. Why you want to do through online? So if it's difficult for you to upload, you say not allowing, you give me physical assessment only.
Sir, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, I'm Bhaskar.
Solunga Bhaskar, sir.
Sir, what is the limit of power of NAC, sir?
Powers of NAC. Yes, I covered the powers. That is the thing. NAC is all powerful under the e-assessment scheme.
Powerful.
They are all powerful. They only decide everything. So, assessee, suppose I have a problem, I ask for a verification unit, it is not done, or the verification is not done properly. Then I cannot complain about the verification unit. I can complain only about NAC. As far as assessee is concerned, I don't even know that there is 4 units and all. We are doing as experts, we are discussing here. But in a practical scenario, I don't even know what are these 4 units. I don't know where they are. I don't even know they exist. I only know NAC is asking me for information. I'm giving it to them. I want opportunity. I'm asking NAC. There is no interaction with assessing officer or assessment unit or technical unit. Nothing. Only the assessee NAC. That is also.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Now I'll very quickly take some practical cases in assessment procedures. Sir, is my clarity there?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So one common thing I get asked very often, intimation under section 143(1). Lot of times, in fact, recently, one of my clients is a salaried person. He's actually a director in a company, very high earning person. He's a salaried person. He is supposed to get a big refund the current year. Suddenly, his refund has been adjusted and he's got a small amount. So he told me, Abhishek, I have not got my full refund. When I checked, I saw demand has been raised for assessment year 2005-06 and it has been adjusted against the refund. So I told him, sir, you must have got some notice of communication. It's saying 2005-06. Yes, that time I was in school. I was not even studying for my CA. I was in school. My father was doing the filing. I said, sir, I have seen the file. We are maintaining the file. Nothing is there in our file. So please check whether you have anything you have received. He says, Abhishek, I have not received anything. I have not received that time also. I have not received now also. How is this demand being raised? Department increasingly is doing this, where they are making adjustments under intimation 1 and they are raising demands for old years and they are adjusting your current year refund against that. So what should you do in these sort of cases? There are two very critical points. The first one, what kind of adjustments can be done? See, 143(1) intimation allows the officer only to make prima facie adjustments. For example, the TDS deducted in my case is 1,000 rupees. But while typing it in that ITR form, instead of typing 1,000, my article types it as 10,000. So the refund becomes a higher amount. So under 143(1), the department can automatically rectify this. It is a prima facie error. So department can rectify. But however, where there is a case, for example, I've given you an example here. This is a practical case. Bajaj Auto Finance versus CIT. It's a Bombay High Court decision where the assessee had bad debts. Under 143(1), the system has disallowed the bad debts. Can the system disallow the bad debts or can the assessing officer disallow bad debts under 143(1)? 143(1) is only an intimation where there's any debatable issue, even slightly debatable also, then no addition can be done under 143(1). A notice, scrutiny notice must be issued and then addition can be made after having a procedural hearing. Under 143(1), only prima facie adjustments can be done. It can never be done on any sort of debatable issue. That is the first major point. So you have any debatable issue, ensure that 143(1) adjustment is done, immediately file appeal, you will win the case on the spot. There will be no discussion also of the issue. I've done many cases though. Having said that, it might seem a very straightforward thing, but department is increasingly making adjustments in 143(1) because many people, they are not fighting it. The clients are also paying it. They are getting a message. In fact, all these people who work in IT companies, salaried persons, they get a message from income tax, they will get scared as if something has happened. So straight away they will pay the tax without even checking what is the reason. So the department increasingly these adjustments are being made. We have to fight it, go on appeal, you will win the case. The next point, remember I told you, my client adjustment has been made against a demand in 2005-06. All you have to do is ask the assessing officer, give me the proof of the notice sent. They will not be able to provide because these are all errors that they had made at the time. You may ask 2005-06, how can they do it? If the person wanted to do a rectification, they have 4 years time. That is also expired. We are in 2019-20, 4 years is over. They want to do 263. 2 years from the end, the order is passed. That is also over. They want to reopen. Maximum 6 years they can reopen. 6 years also over because 2019-20 means 6 years is 2013. So they cannot reopen also. This is 2005-06. How can that officer raise a demand today? All these years, nothing he has done. Today he is adjusting it against my refund. How can he do it? A very critical point. No intimation can be sent after the expiry of 1 year from the end of the financial year in which the return is made. So 1 year after which your return is filed, intimation cannot be sent. So 2005-06, if he is sending me intimation today, he can say, no, I sent it that time, nobody responded, I'm resending it. I don't care. He does not have the record proof. Therefore, as far as I am concerned, that addition in 2005-06 is void. Straight away case will be won in your favor. Go on appeal. Easily it will be won. Easily it will be won. Regular scrutiny, I don't have time. I'm not going to go into details of it. I've already covered limited scrutiny, full scrutiny. I will go directly into now. Okay, communication of notice. Now, this is one more common thing that I'm really asked. Somebody asked now also, and we discussed how the communication will be done. So, in a scenario, how will your communication be received? So, this is the procedure. If it is going to be done by physical notification, then whatever address is there in your PAN database, that is the first address they can send it to. Whatever address is there in the income tax return, this is for the service of your notice, the receiving and service of notice, the following addresses. If they give it, then it is considered to be served. It is considered to be served. Whatever address is there in the PAN database. whatever address is there in the latest income tax return you have filed. If that is also there, not there, I have not filed an income tax return. Then whatever address is there in the last income tax return you filed, 6 years back you filed a return, then that one. If that is also not there, I've never filed the return. Then registered office of the company as per the MCA website, that is also not there. Then whatever address you have replied from, or whatever email ID, one assessing officer back in 2007, he says that I don't have there's a lot of floods in Chennai today. You please send me the documents by email. So I upload it, I send it from my personal email ID, abhishekmurali@gmail.com. I send the email to him. So what is the income tax saying? Any email address that at any point of time in the history that the assessee has replied from, that will be considered to be a valid email ID. So therefore, this is yet another example of why you should upload the email ID and ensure that you're putting the client's email ID there. Ensure you put their latest email ID, latest phone number. Best judgment assessment. In the following cases, best judgment assessment will be done. Where assessee fails to file a return, or he fails to respond to a notice, he fails to comply with the conditions under 143(2), best judgment assessment will be done. I give you an example of a scenario where best judgment assessment will be done. If you look at the act, or you look at any subject material about income tax, they'll say best judgment assessment means whatever material available on record, the assessee will, the assessing officer will use that material and he will formulate his opinion, he'll formulate the order. But actually, in practicality, best judgment assessment means no judgment assessment. There is no judgment the assessing officer is going to use. What they will do, and this is a case that I handled for me. What happened in this assessee's case? The assessing officer, he gave a huge checklist under 142(1). He gave a huge checklist saying, give me this, give me that, bring this details, bring me that. So almost 50 items was there. One of the items was confirmation from creditors. Assessee said, he gave 35 items. He said, confirmation from creditors, few other things. Give me some time. They are not replying. I will definitely submit. Assessing officer did not give time. He straight away passed a best judgment assessment order saying, I asked for 50 items, they have not given. Actually, assessee gave 35 things. So worst case, what he should have done? The 35 he should have considered and he should have passed an order. Maybe that 15 items you did not give, you want to make addition, you make. This assessing officer, he said nothing assessee is given. All expenses disallowed. All expenses, entire sale is his profit. If really there is a business like that, you tell me, I will surrender my COP and start that business. Where no expenses is there, everything disallowed. Even GST paid, or rather VAT paid, disallowed. Your employee, the salary paid on which PF, TDS, everything deducted, not allowed, disallowed. So all the expenses he has disallowed. Government remittances also disallowed. So this is the best judgment assessment, where the best knowledge they are using and they are passing the judgment. So therefore you cannot say that it is incorrect also. You can challenge and say opportunity must be given. But the reality exists. If it goes to best judgment assessment, they will not apply too much, they will pass the order. So what should we do? One important point for us. If the best judgment assessment is being done under 144, opportunity must be given. A show cause notice must be issued to the assessee on why best judgment assessment should not be done. So you have an opportunity there to say that, no, I was not in town. My family member died. So I had to go to their hometown. So I did not know these notices came. So allow me an opportunity to respond today. So you can always ask for a real and reasonable opportunity in best judgment assessment. If they do not give you that opportunity, you can always later on object to it. We're running out of time, so I'm going to do the critical points of 147, practical issues. You all know few things where the AO has reason to believe, income may have escaped assessment, he can reopen this assessment. So when can he reopen? Up to 4 years, no questions asked, he can reopen the assessment. Beyond 4 years, few criteria are there. Income sought to be escaped must be more than 1 lakh. Then there must be concerned approvals from the Joint Commissioner, Principal Commissioner. And one more thing. There must have been a failure on part of the assessee to have disclosed or not disclosed certain details. Then only they can reopen beyond a period of 4 years. They cannot simply reopen there must have been a failure on part of the assessee to not disclose some details. Then only you can reopen beyond a period of 4 years. I will take you an example. Your assessing officer, he's walking down the road. He's walking down the road. Your neighbors, your assessee's neighbors, they happen to be walking in the same direction that he is. They are discussing. It seems this assessee, he has a lot of income. He has a lot of gold. He is having many income that he has not disclosed to his assessing officer. That assessing officer, he is hearing all this. Oh, is that so? I'm going to go and reopen. Can he reopen? He has the reason to believe. Can he reopen based on what he has heard? He has heard some people walking down the road. They are saying this assessee has so much income in his house. He has not disclosed. Assessing officer is not added. Can he reopen that income based on this information? That is an interesting question. So this is a practical scenario. You might think it's an exaggeration. It's actually a practical scenario where in the case of Jayesh Govindbai versus ITO, this had come up, where the High Court had held at the time saying that assessing officer cannot reopen based on rumor. He cannot reopen your assessment based on rumor. He has to be on either reasonable evidence or circumstantial evidence. It cannot be on suspicion and rumor. So by hearing your neighbors walking down talking about what gold he has, he cannot reopen. It must be reasonable. It must be reasonable. Can a AO cover points other than what has been the real reason for reopening? Their reason for reopening, in my case, is capital gains. He is also making addition in income from other sources. Can he do it? Yes, there is nothing doing it. However, the Supreme Court decision, Gangasaran and Sons, where the reason for reopening is capital gains, addition made in salary, addition made in, let's say, other sources. But the reason for reopening capital gains, no addition made, because I was able to justify my case. Then in that case, they held where the main reason for reopening, that itself is not valid. Then in that case, you cannot make an addition in other heads. So therefore, if the reason for reopening does not subsist, then addition cannot be made on other heads. If you want, you reopen again. If you want, you reopen again. But in the same reopening, you cannot do it. Can the same assessment year be reopened multiple times? No restriction. In Kalkar Glass and Crockery House, they held it can be reopened 1,000 times also if they want. As long as they have the adequate reasons, it complies with the requirements and the conditions of the Act. That is enough. They can reopen how many ever times they want. See, up to 2003, many of the case laws you will be reading, you will have major issues. We asked for reasons, they did not give it. The reasons were not valid. You go all the way to High Court. When High Court asks, give me what reasons they are for reopening, assessing officer used to say, no, sir, we don't have any reasons, sir. Actually, we just reopened it and we found it. And a lot of these issues used to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the next slide is the most important slide as far as reassessment is concerned. In 2003, there's a landmark decision called GK and Driveshaft versus ITO. It's a Supreme Court decision. It is a judge-made law. It is a judge-made law. Till 2003, there was no manner as to how you should handle reopening of cases. In 2003, this GK and Driveshaft, they specified how an assessee should handle a case of reopening. So this is very important because if you read the Bar Act, you will never find this. It is a judge-made law. So what does the law say? If your assessee receives a notice for reopening under section 148, the first thing he must do, he has to file a return in response to the notice. So therefore, your assessee must file a return in response to them. What if your assessee is the most honest assessee? In fact, I used to audit Hindustan Unilever. They had a condition that even if there's a 1 rupee bribe asked and there's a demand, let's say there's a refund of several crores, if the assessing officer or whoever at the time indirect tax authorities, they used to ask a lot of money. So even if 1 rupee is asked, file a case and don't give anything is what the Hindustan Unilever used to have. So they were honest taxpayers, or so you can say honest taxpayers. So your assessee is a very, very honest taxpayer and reopening is done. Whoever honest he is, I don't care, you have to file a return. So it is a procedure. You have to file a return in response. It can be the very same income tax return. Or if you want, you can modify also. But you have to file a return in response to the notice. Then next step. After filing your return, you can ask for reasons from the assessing officer. The AO, he has to compulsorily give the reasons. He cannot not give you. So if your case is reopened and you have filed a return in response, you can ask for reasons. If the assessing officer does not provide you reasons, that means he's violating this. So he has to compulsorily provide the reasons for reopening. Once you receive the reasons, after you receive the reasons, as an assessee, you can raise your objections to the reasons. You can say this reason is not valid. It's an invalid reason. I am objecting to this. The assessing officer, he is duty bound to respond and dispose of your objections. Whatever objections you are raising, he is duty bound to dispose of each of the objections. He has to give in writing why he is not accepting your objections. And only after that he can pass his assessment itself. Reassessment can be started. Ladies and gentlemen, critical point. Reassessment can be started only after this procedure. It can only be started. I'm not saying completion. It can only start after this entire procedure is done. So therefore, if there is a case where your assessee, he has asked for the reasons and the assessing officer has not given you the reasons, then straight away you can win the case. No questions asked. I am not saying it will be sent back. You will win the case. You will win the case because this is the Supreme Court has held in multiple cases, especially Garden Finance, Asian Paints, Home Finders, Martech Peripherals. In all of these cases, they have held. It is not simply a procedural irregularity. It is a mandatory requirement of law. So if your assessing officer, he has not given you the reasons or he has not disposed of your objections, then he has failed his duty. He's failed his responsibility. You have every right to file the appeal. The entire assessment will be quashed. It will not be sent back to him. It will be quashed. It will be quashed. But however, being Tamil Nadu, both Vellore, Kumbakonam and Chennai, in Madras High Court recently there was a decision in Home Finders Housing Limited where they held it is a procedural irregularity. We'll send it back to the assessing officer. Let him again give you the reasons and pass the order. But this is a highly incorrect decision. I don't know who was arguing the case. They have represented it poorly because multiple decisions, even in Madras itself, there are multiple decisions saying it is not a procedural irregularity. It has to be compulsorily complied with. If you have not complied, then it will be assessment itself is invalid. Then other scenario that happened where I told you it is a compulsory requirement. So what assessing officers used to do is you ask for reasons, he will give you. You are raising the objections. He has to dispose of the objections. So he is not disposing. Last day of passing the order, what he does is afternoon he is passing the order. In the morning he is giving you a disposing the objections. Or morning he is giving you the reasons. What he is doing, morning he is giving you the reasons for reopening. Afternoon he is passing the order. Is this acceptable? Because as per law, it looks like he has given you the reasons. You have not responded, or rather he has disposed of it. And after that he has completed the reassessment. So in Garden Finance, this happened, where the Supreme Court held that, yes, he has to dispose, but he cannot even start the assessment proceedings without disposing. So therefore, we have to be practical. They put a time. They said minimum 4 weeks should be there between the disposal of objections and passing the final order. So morning you cannot dispose and evening you cannot pass the order. That is not a real opportunity. You have not stayed true to the law. So minimum a period of 4 weeks they specified, saying that disposal of objections and passing of final order should be there. This is in Garden Finance and Asian Paints. Can assessment be reopened based on change of opinion? I told you example of 54F earlier in capital gains, where 2 houses I'm owning. That assessing officer who is handling my case, I explained to him, I give him many case laws. He says, yes, Abhishek, you are correct. 2 houses, when they are the same house, it has to be considered as one only. So he passes an order without any addition. Subsequently, they reopen it. They reopen the case. New assessing officer comes. He says, no, I am from Bombay. In Bombay, there's a case saying that if you have 2 apartments also, I don't care. It has to be considered as 2 houses. Whether it is joined, the same gate and all, I don't care. It is 2 houses. So therefore, you have violated the provisions of 54F. I am making addition. Now, this is a matter of opinion. So in my view, and in Kelvinator India, this is a Supreme Court decision. They held you cannot reopen an assessment on mere change of opinion. On a mere change of opinion, you cannot reopen the assessment. So 3i Infotech has also held that, and most recently during the lockdown, NDTV judgment has come in Supreme Court where they have said where your reopening is beyond a period of 4 years, the department has to demonstrate, they have to demonstrate in the order that there is a failure on part of the assessee. There is a failure on part of the assessee for not disclosing certain information, where the assessee has given everything during the course of the original assessment itself. You cannot simply reopen later by saying that no, he has not given. You have to demonstrate that he has not given. If the assessee can show that he has already given all the information, whether it is come out in the order or not, the assessee has very much complied with all the provisions. You cannot reopen the assessment. It is an invalid reassessment. It is an invalid reassessment. Order will be quashed. Order will be quashed. So I think with this, I will close the presentation. I have many case laws that I have with me. What I will do is I will share my presentation. I'm going to share my number here. You can see my number. That is my WhatsApp number also. You can feel free to drop me a message. You can. I'm more than happy to share the PPT with you. All the case laws. I'm sure it will be useful. Thank you so much to both Visahan sir and Sudharan sir for giving me this opportunity for addressing both the Kumbakonam branch and the members of the Vellore branch. If there's any remaining questions, I will just take that before we close because I know we're running out of time. Yes, Sadagopan sir, he said failure to disclose by assessee. Please comment with the latest Supreme. Oh, so I think he has asked this before I quoted the Supreme Court decision, and that is the Supreme Court decision, sir, that I quoted. Any more questions that you may have? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the members for a very patient hearing. Sometimes when it is an online hearing, normally I enjoy addressing face to face. I ask a lot of questions. I try to trick people. I say, raise your hands, all that I will do. And Kumbakonam watched, even Vellore branch, when I recently addressed, I did that. So sometimes when you're doing online, there are certain restrictions. So thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed. As always, I always enjoy addressing in Kumbakonam and the members of Vellore branch. I once again enjoyed it and interacting with all the members. Thank you all for giving me this wonderful opportunity and this presentation. I once again thank the chairman of the branches and the other management committee members. Thank you, sir. Over to you, Visahan sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Well, thanks for the wonderful presentation, sir. As usual, wonderful presentation, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
Now invite our branch secretary, Venkatesan sir, to propose vote of thanks, sir. Venkatesan sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I have attended various programs organized by SIRC in which our Dr. Abhishek Murali will propose vote of thanks. I am very privileged to propose vote of thanks, thanking him for on this occasion in this forum. Yesterday evening, I have attended a program organized by Andhra Pradesh Tax Bar Association, in which Dr. Abhishek Murali is also a speaker. I really wondered how he is able to give such a wonderful presentation. Yesterday he presented it for Andhra Pradesh, day before some other forum also. Today he is presenting for Kumbakonam branch. Sir, presentation is really wonderful. The Vellore branch chairman has introduced Dr. Abhishek Murali and telling various academic degrees to his credit. His presentation is so much beautiful that because of those credentials behind his name. we really enjoyed the presentation, sir. Both the e-assessment proceedings and assessment procedures and the question answer section is also very good, and it will be useful to all our members. I thank you very much, sir, for your lucid presentation and staying with us for this evening. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.